A very good evening to our viewers tonight. Welcome to this week's edition of Talk to Sven. I also like to welcome our sign language interpreter, Salma, as every week, and obviously my partner, Denver Kisting. This is a very special edition since we are commemorating the importance of women in life. I think women are probably the most important creation in the world. And if you think about it, that we are associated with our mothers from birth, maybe until very late in our youth, it is a very important partner in starting our life. Tonight, we have two very special ladies joining us in debating the importance of women. We have assurance partner at PwC Namibia, Nangula Nwanja, and the MVA Fund CEO, Rosalia Martins Hausiko. Denver, I think when we look at the role that women play in society, it is very often appreciated. And I had a look on some TED Talks, and we see in women since they start and are our examples and leaders as children, yet only 5% worldwide are heads of state. In fact, non-profit organizations, only 20%. Corporate professions, only 15%, and in parliaments, 13%. And when I watched the TED Talk from Kirsten Hall, she says, yes, and we women come from an unequal pay background. We're discriminated many times, and we are also celebrated as women, and not necessarily for our performance. And she says she's actually tired of this, that she isn't being part of a quota of running a corporate. She says she doesn't want to be associated with any women associations anymore. She wants to be recognized for that she is a woman and that she's performing. And she also says one of the biggest things in women is that they are very humble. They are very, always take a step back, always allows others to go first. And I think these are all things that we as leaders actually need. So women are actually born leaders. And she says that, the women need to learn to she calls it sit at the table, meaning believing in yourself. You're equal to your colleagues. She also says that you need to realize and make sure your partner, spouse, and so forth, is a real partner. It is not such you are responsible for the children and I'm responsible for the work. And what happens mostly that women are responsible for both. And then the last thing she says, don't leave before you leave. And what she means by that is that one of her colleagues, she was, I think, 23. She was planning already having children. So what she did, she actually always took a step back and allowed others to go forward. But in her mind, she was living ahead. And then when she asked her, so who's your lucky husband? She says, no, I don't even have a boyfriend yet, right? So which means what women often do, they are so ahead in thinking and taking responsibility, they leave the place before they actually should leave. So I think, Denver, that's just a few comments to start the conversation. And obviously with Rosalia and Nangula, we have some wonderful speakers here tonight.
Very good evening, Sven. Good evening to our lovely guests. We're quite honored to have you. Also, good evening to the viewer. Sven, I have to agree with you, and I have to agree with the stance in the TED Talk that we're certainly not appreciating women enough. And I can imagine and I can understand that some women have had enough of being associated with women's organizations, because that in itself could also amount to discrimination. But we're not there yet. So I'm happy to be part of a space that celebrates women, that acknowledges the very important role that they play, and that's exactly why you ladies are here. I'd like to start with you, please, ma'am. Why is it still important in 2020 to acknowledge the role that women play, but also to celebrate them?
Thank you, Denver. Good evening. Good evening, Sven and Nangula. Yes, as Sven opened, I think it's historical that the role that women play has never been brought at the center stage. And the few women that are really active, I think it's important that we basically create a narrative out there and say that women are also capable of leadership. And women also have an equal seat on the table. And that's why I think it is really important that those who recognize celebrate that. And those who recognize that they create the narrative so that those who have not seen it yet start moving closer to that discussion and acknowledging women and involving them.
You use the analogy of the table that Swen also referred to. But I think women should not only be granted a seat at the table, they should be allowed to voice their opinions and their concerns. What do you make of that?
It is true. You know, I was speaking to a group of young people, I think it was over the weekend, that a lot of times we are waiting to be called on the table. But are we preparing ourselves so that when we are around that table, we make a meaningful contribution? And I shared something that I call anticipate your name to be called. Because when you anticipate your name to be called, you will prepare yourself so that when you get that seat and when you open your mouth, you basically pave a way for those who are coming after you.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Can I just add to that, Denver? I mean, also on I saw that TED talk, she was actually promoting women. And then she invited the audience to ask questions. And you know what she did by default? She only asked the men to comment or to ask questions. She completely forgot the women. And like you said just now, we also need to prove that we could lead too. I mean, this is alone that you say could means that already it's as if it should be known by everyone. You are leading children's life. She's sharing every day what you need to do and not to.
So what I hear you say is that women should also celebrate women. And that's not something that we see consistently. Is that also your observation, ma'am?
Yes, Denver, good evening, and it's great to be here. So I think, yes, some of the challenges that we face, and to me, sometimes I have mixed feelings about the topic, because it's almost like, should I be seen as a female leader or as a leader? And I think that is sometimes where the conversation starts. We have got female leaders and we've got leaders. Why don't we just have leaders? Yeah. And then, yes, you need that recognition of female leaders because probably it's because they are more or less absent that we need to recognize the need to have more female leaders present. So I think that is the challenges that we have. And yes, one day or a few years ago, I attended a conference where they said that women are over-mentored and under-sponsored. And I think that is really where the challenge that we have. Because if you find out and you hear about mentorship, mentor organizations for women are a lot. You barely hear about mentor organization for boy child. But for girl child, there is this one. But in the end, we still end up having more boys and more men in leadership position than girls and than women. Why is that the case? Because although there is not an organized kind of workshop for boys, I think the ones that speaks up for boys, the relationships that they have, the people that are going and they are the ones that they are meeting and they are speaking up for them at the places where it matters are more than the ones that speak up for women. So women is like, you're here, we train you, we tell you how to do something, there you go. A boy is like, let me take you with to this meeting. And I think that those are the type of actions that we need to take and to consider more if we definitely need to bring more women to the table.
I would like to unpack I'd like us to unpack that for a moment. Swen also talks about taking leadership into our homes. Do you think it perhaps has something to do with the way we still raise our boy child versus the way we raise our girl child in this 2020?
I believe so. I actually always say that I believe that a part of who I am today is the way my parents raised us. And maybe we were blessed because my parents got 2 girls first and then the boys came later. So I don't know if that gave us an opportunity as the 2 girls to be exposed. So my father was a business person and my mother was a teacher, but they kind of ran the business together. And part of that was they made us part of the business and they made us part of the decision making. So at an early stage, my father will make sure that my mother, my sister and I are part of the table, we are part of the decision making, we are part of running business, and we grew up there. And I think that is definitely one of the main contributors to why women end up where they are, and of course, boys end up where they are. So like I said, maybe that is a blessing, and definitely we need to make sure that it's not about who comes first, it's about all children in the household getting that same opportunity.
Yeah, perhaps you were fortunate under your particular circumstances, but it should have nothing to do with it, if I hear you correctly,
Yes.
whether or not you were born first.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is that also your observation that we still treat the boy child differently, we still raise him differently, and that perhaps impacts on the women leaders of tomorrow?
Absolutely, I agree. I mean, growing up, our mothers would actually tell you where a girl's place is. You know, it's almost like the girl is kept aside. You want to say something and yet this is not your place. But it's actually a contradiction in that. If you look at how our mothers took the role in the house, just look at the time of the struggle. The men were out in the field, they were in the battlefield. Who was at home? Who was the CEO of the house? Who was the manager of the house? She would make sure that everything is running smoothly. The kids go to school. The kids are taken care of. The kids are fed. It's almost like the mother had ducks in a row, but still there is that contradiction in that the boy child was raised a bit differently, in that the girl child was kept a bit behind. Like, you need to know where your place is. And that's why when we grow up as women, even when we eventually take up these positions, these managerial positions, you have this feeling behind you like you are a fraud, like you don't belong there, like something is not right, you know. And really, I agree, it has to do with the way we are brought up.
Sven, how can one change this? How can one start at home to make sure that we treat our children equally, whether they're boys or girls?
I think the first thing is that we need to acknowledge who we are, where we come from. Now, I know, for example, that the database, the hardware of each and every one of us is created within the last 3 months of pregnancy and the next 7 years. Whatever happens in life is always tested against those, say, 7 years and 3 months. You tell your children, please eat properly, or you don't say these things in life. You need to respect, and you need to do and everything else. And obviously they capture also things such as, it's these people, I don't like these people, or all these things are captured in there. And this is basically where we need to realize it's such a critical stage of the development of ourselves. Thereafter, and they say, that's the majority you learn. The majority of what you learn is up to 7 years. Thereafter comes schooling, thereafter comes university, and thereafter comes everything else. So I think to recognize how important, firstly, that stage is, that the woman is, your wife, the mother is looked after, is not always understood. And I think often what doesn't help in today's lives, the women are then out for up to 15, say 18 months due to pregnancy and the time thereafter, that it is the men then mostly that goes out and goes and earns the money while he's supposed to be there. And that's the other one which I'm saying, equal partners. We have to find ways and teach early that it's important that, we as the husbands or the fathers need to play an equal role to support our partners. And I think this is where we need to start. The second thing is, obviously, as Nangula just now said, the first thing, if there's a TV not working, son, can you try and fix it? You don't say, daughter, go and try and fix it.
True.
It's automatic. But it's not only men who do that, it's women too. And I think it's this old thinking that the man is the caveman. He needs to provide, and he looks to look after, while the wife is, looking after the children. And there comes then the thing is that we forget some of those things, that we are the caveman, but not only for income. We are the caveman for the beauty of the life and providing an environment for your partner to create the best possible well-educated, ready children for the world. And I think that's where it starts. And I think, Rosalia just made the comment as well. Or Nangula, in fact, we're not celebrating, women don't celebrate women. They're also equal part of this. Like this lady, she would first ask questions what the men have to say, not the women. No? Although it's a topic about women. But it's a natural default. It's just like this thing, children, son and daughter. Which one you ask first. So luckily my first one is a daughter, and I've made a point. I try and get, even the small one always get asked last. Just because it's the small one, not because of anything else.
So when I hear you and I agree with you, if the foundation is laid up to 7 years, for the rest of our lives, we have a lot of unlearning to do, but also relearning to do to make sure that we interrogate these deeply rooted beliefs and ultimately change life and society. Nangula, bearing in mind that as much as we're striving towards a world where we need not distinguish between a female leader or a male leader, where we can just honor leaders, we're not there yet. I can't imagine that your journey thus far, especially in leadership, was a casual walk in the park. Please talk to us about the challenges which you experienced, to what extent those shaped your journey and how you overcame them.
Danwa, it's an interesting question because I can promise you my journey was a casual walk in the park.
Wow.
And it's because I decided it will be a casual walk in the park.
Beautiful.
So normally I tell people, look, one thing God has given me the grace of is ignoring what I don't want to see.
How does one do that?
Because I know that when you notice what you don't want to see and it's not good for your development, it stops you from doing what you need to do. So what I learned to do is decide, where do I want to go? What do I want to achieve? That one. What are the distractions? Many times, whether we are women or whatever, in the types of minority and environment, we get distracted by things that are not important. And as women, being a woman sometimes distracts us. Because then you start feeling, are they doing this to me because I'm a woman, or I don't have time for that? So normally in my leadership journey, I don't get time to think about, is it because, it's not because to me is, I know who I am, I'm comfortable with who I am, I know why I got where I am, and because of that, I will not even assume that you are treating me any different because of something else. I will assume you are a human being, you are making a mistake, you are treating me in a way that you will treat another human being for whatever, and I will correct you if I need to correct you, and I will ignore you if I will need to ignore you, but I will focus on what I need to do. And I think many times why we end up falling in our leadership journey is because we pay attention to the little unimportant message. And somebody was speaking to me a few months ago. It was actually a male friend. He had a meeting with me, and we were talking about something, and he said, women have got this way of kind of derailing themselves. And we derail ourselves many times by listening to what we should not be listening to and acting on it. So, which conversations are you listening to? Are they conversations that are building you up as a leader, or conversations that are derailing you? And what are you paying attention to? Yes, there's things that we need to know because they are important for us to do the right things. But what is important is to know, that is my journey, that's where I need to. Yes, there might be distractions, but I need to learn. What must I quickly drop so that I can proceed? And what must I hang on to? And I think that is really what is important in leadership. So yes, I can tell you a lot of stories and so on, but they're all irrelevant. I have met people that have treated me well. I am here because today there's a lot of men that have played a major role in getting me here. Starting with my father, starting with somebody called Davi Furi, who brought me to PwC, starting with the 10 male partners at PwC that I work. And there's a lot of women that I worked with. I've got my bishop, she's a woman, she's somebody who has mentored me. I've got Krishna, she's a wife of David, who has mentored me. And I will tell you, many people, male, female, white, black, that have all shaped me today. But I can also tell you many that have done things to derail my career, but that is not important. have achieved, and it's because of the contribution of many people.
I can only say wow, and I wish you could see my smile, but you can't under these new normal circumstances. Hopefully it's visible in my eyes. Thanks for sharing that very powerful journey with us. Just very briefly on the distractions, if they do come your way, I hear you say that one needs to know what to ignore. You need to be discerning about these challenges. How do you do that? How do you ignore a distraction that you know is not going to serve any meaningful purpose?
I think it's about managing your emotions. One thing is when something comes. So let's say somebody tells me, Nangula, I think this person is trying to do ABCD to you. All of us are human beings, so you get hurt. And then sometimes the first reaction is you want to act. So yes, if you can ask for the wisdom and the calmness to just think about it first, leave it, drop it, continue with your life, and sleep over it. Tomorrow, something more important will come up and you will forget about it. So not to kind of just be reacting to things as they happen. Think about it and make sure that you ponder on what am I going to do about A, B, C, D, so that you can make sure that your answer or your solution is really very well thought through. And it's not just a spur in the moment response based on the emotions of the time.
Do not give the distraction more oxygen than it deserves.
You should not.
Rosalia, please talk to us about your journey in leadership.
I resonate so much with Nangula. It's just that in my case, it came at a later stage. I really had to learn the hard way because stepping into a leadership position where people are judging you because of your age, they're judging you because you're a woman. So it was a bit difficult in the beginning in that you start asking yourself, do I really belong here? There's a meeting called for the industry. For instance, the MVA Fund was in the Ministry of Works. And you attend this meeting, it's a big boardroom, and you find yourself the only woman there. And you start, the conversations in your mind is, do I really belong here? Am I at the right place? But like Nangula says, you have to go back to your purpose. And you start asking yourself, what am I here for? It really took a while, and it takes a lot of emotional intelligence, emotional maturity for you to start telling yourself, actually, I belong here. I deserve to have a seat on this table. And I deserve to say something on this table, and it should be respected the same way that everybody who's contributing is also respected. I had an incident earlier on when I just started where we came into the boardroom, and then somebody asked, is somebody taking notes? And then everybody's looking around, and you can actually see that some eyes are looking at you. So I also started looking around.
Yes.
Like, really,
yes.
I'm not here to take notes. If you knew that there's a meeting, you should have prepared that the right person who should take notes is here. And it starts with that. A lot of times as women, unfortunately, when you see those eyes, or when you're asked, Rosalia, do you mind taking notes? Or sometimes you even volunteer yourself.
Yes.
As a woman, you should stand up and say, unfortunately, I'm not here to take notes. I'm also here to contribute. So initially, that was the battle. But eventually, I had to really start speaking to myself. I had to sift things through. When I read an article on social media that's saying, Rosalia was appointed because she's a woman, because of this, where I say, I'm going to shut that down because I know what I was appointed for. I know what I'm capable of. And there's a lot of self-talk. I always say that while women like talking about the glass ceiling, I don't think the problem is really the glass ceiling. The problem is the battle from within. And that is really, if we win that battle from within, anything is possible. And once you know your purpose, you know your goal, you're unstoppable.
Beautiful. What I hear you say is also that we should be clear about our boundaries, and that whether you're a woman or a man, we should call people out who discriminate against women, who expect the woman in the room to be taking the minutes.
Absolutely.
And also as a man in that room say, but no, she will not be taking the minutes, or I will be taking the minutes, and that's not right. So we should also open our mouths, all of us, to make sure that we honor women and we treat them equally.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in the beginning, it was hard work for me because nobody knew me. Suddenly, there's this announcement, this is the CEO of MVA Fund. The conversations were, who is she? Where does she come from? So there was a lot of work behind the scenes. I had to make sure there's a meeting tomorrow. I have to be super prepared because I felt when I opened my mouth, I needed people to know who I was. Now when I walk into a room, the work is not the same. It's not as extra as it was. And that's why I feel it is important as women, we desire leadership positions. We desire to get there, but there's also self-preparation that needs to happen. We really need to be willing to go the extra mile.
Thank you for going the extra mile. Swen, the ONL Group also acknowledges the importance of women, and there are a number of women in the leadership structure. What is a discerning factor from your experience which they bring to the table?
Yeah, I must firstly tell you when I was thinking about that question now, is it true? Do we have? Because you just regard them as leaders, and yes, what we have, we've got this TAP program, this talent attraction pool, and obviously the majority of those initiatives mostly are female women. And in fact, it is going to, there's a whole wave coming at the moment of taking the business forward. They really, so just below top, I think we're 4 or 5 in the top, but just below, it's the majority is women that really come up now. And I think I'm passionate, like Rosalia and Angula says, I'm passionate about great leadership. It's difficult to see for me, is it a woman or man? Is it important? Yes, it is somehow in the background. It keeps you get reminded by that, but that's the wrong thing. I don't want my colleagues, because they're women, that they are be seen or recognized. They need to be recognized for what they do. And I think I'm in this space that women need to understand they are born leaders. They are born leaders. They don't have to become leaders. They are born leaders. I think we need to all respect it. But the question I have, why are we men like that? Is this something, there could be the one view where we say, I care so much about women, so I'll rather take the lead, not to expose. Or it is simply greed and simple non-recognition. It's a very fine line. Why is that so? That's why I went to this topic. I'm so passionate about this topic, to understand why does it happen? I'll tell you one thing, if this world would be led by the other way around, not the 9%, say 9% men and the rest women, we would have a better world.
I hear you, and it's an important but also a very difficult question. My sense is that we are the way we are. Society is where it's at because of all of us. It's an indictment on all of us, and we have to accept responsibility for our individual contribution to the conversation, to the discourse, to the setting of boundaries, to the calling people out who are sexist. And that's the only way that we're going to accomplish equality. And until such time, I want us to celebrate and acknowledge the role that women play. Nangula, I wish we had all evening to talk about this. We need to start wrapping up slowly. During these tumultuous times, during this time of uncertainty, during our pursuit of what we believe to be a new normal, leadership is so important, and Swen emphasizes that all the time, and it needs to start at home. What's your message of inspiration this evening to leaders of households, whether they're men or women, captains of industry, about how we're going to take our journey forward and brave these times?
Then I think this time, of course, like any other time, and looking at the topic we have talked about, is really about having conversation in our homes. And I think one thing that the time, especially now working remotely and working from home, has enabled me to do is to make sure that I have got more conversation with my children. And I think they appreciate sometimes the presence there, and they appreciate that you are there. And you can see also how much you can impart upon their lives, and having various topics. So this Sunday, we were talking something about marriage. So I just wanted to talk to my children, and they're 18, 16, I've got a 20-something-year-old, and we talk about marriage in general, because yes, they see marriage and they see marriage is not doing well and so on, and you need to still speak to them about what is the purpose. So that is just one of the topic, the importance of women, gender. What is that? Why is it important? So many times we have got this conversation here, but the point is that this conversation, when we grow up, there's something we called ohungi in our families. So in my father's house, after dinner, all of us will go to a place we call olupale. We will gather around the fire, And my father will tell us stories. My mother will tell us stories, and we will share stories. And today, I remember those times. And I think that is how I was brought up. And I think today we are in a society where we are not teaching our children. They are too much with TV, too much with Facebook and Instagram and so on, but we are not making time to have the conversation. So this time, maybe it's time that is meant for us to be at home so that we can have those conversations. Let us not waste that time.
I'm on the record for saying that we can build and solve this country one conversation at a time. Thank you very much for that. Rosalia, your final words of inspiration. What is the way forward? How can we make use of leadership during this difficult time?
Yeah, Denver, I just wanted to say, and it's all that Dutch, that leadership really comes to the fore or rises in difficult times. And I think during this difficult time of COVID-19, I'm not sure whether we still describe it as difficult time, because it's now what everybody's calling the new normal. More than ever before, leaders need to arise. In the way that we are leading our virtual spaces, and also what Nangula spoke about, in the way that we are leading our homes. I guess the world has experienced us as female leaders, Nangula and I, out there, and it takes quite a lot of our time. But COVID-19 for me has given me a second chance at home as well, to the same impact that is out there, to bring the same impact at home.
Wow.
Because the time was so limited at home. You come from work and you're trying to squeeze in so much in this little person. And the whole day they were at school, they were at soccer, they were at karate, and then you only have that little time. So for me, from the time of the lockdown and now having the opportunity to work from home, I'm doing exactly that, what Nangula said. It is time now for my children also to experience this CEO that everybody has experienced all along. It's time for them to experience that part as well. Not only to see me as a mother, but they must see me also as a community leader, as a leader in Namibia, and how is it that I function that role? And I'm exposing that to my children. After all, if the resource is available at home, why can't they tap on it while it's available at home? Why should they wait until one day they are at Harvard, they are at Stellenbosch to be taught about leadership? If I am there, this is now the time that I'm also now connecting with my children, because the sports is no longer there, and I'm also not at the office. So we do homeschooling. Once we're done with homeschooling, I'm there to do other stuff, and they can actually experience me as well.
Wow, two things come to mind. One is, do not let a good crisis go to waste.
That's
and
right.
secondly, your second life starts the moment you realize you only have one.
That's right.
Thank you very much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Swain,
Wonderful.
wow.
Yeah. No, Denver, I must really say, what a wonderful discussion. I think I actually am sad it's over, that we have to end the session, but it's what an inspiration. And I think, Rosalia, what you said about it's a second chance for us as women. And I think the men must say the same, because they also have to spend more time with the children and play and do their part on it. So a nice thing I'm going to take home. And Angula, I must say, with the Ungungi, we at Hangana, our company, we have regulars, you'd call it an Ugungi, and they're just called Ungungi, where we all sit together and discuss matters. But I think for our families, we have to have many Ugungis going forward to explain how important the things are, which ones are important, which ones are not that important for life. Very inspiring. So, and I can see also the two of you are, I can just hear you're focusing on leadership, not necessarily that you're a woman. It's just that's the answer. And I think that's what we can take, bring our fellow women back home and say that, hey, you are a born leader, and that's the start. You don't have to wait for anyone. Go and sit at the table. Make sure you've got an equal partner, and don't leave before you leave. These are the things, once again, Rosalia and Nangula, thank you very much. Denver, as always, my partner who inspires the session beyond, and of course, our sign language interpreter, Mrs. Simon. She has been really with us from day one. Thank you so much, and looking forward to see you next week.